are my friends. Come along with me, see how the story ends.
Welcome back to another episode of the Professional Hippies podcast. We have one of our favorite guests back on. It's been some time. He's been through a lot of success and a lot of great stories. And Brian Thomas, welcome back, man. I know we've been communicating for a little bit, and you've been so busy. We're like, hey, Brian, can you come on after this festival? He's like, I got another festival. Another one lined up.
Thanks,
all right, the next one.
Man.
Dude, it is so awesome to have you back. We're kind of stacking up for these episodes to come out in July, so this will come out in a few weeks, of course, because I'm going on about a month trip, so we're kind of stacking them up and getting them ready. But Brian, how have you been, man?
I've been good, man. I've been good. I've gone kind of a little bit through a battle through the last couple of months on making sure the show was it was a success. And I'm just like, I'm just so glad that, it's now behind us. Now we're working on everything for November. Obviously, there's a lot of good things going on between us moving to a new property, and, going for more of a growth aspect of the focus on just home base alone as itself, So, I'm excited, man.
That's just amazing to have, usually when people throw a party, they're like, oh, it's done, it might be a little while before they throw the next party. And you're like, yep, one ended. We're already on to the next one, already planning it. And then we're on to the next one. That's just got to be such an interesting place to be in.
And yeah, man. By the way, for the folks that maybe haven't caught you on our previous episodes, because
sorry,
I'm also curious to hear the iteration of how your elevator bio with home base grows every time as the different ventures you're getting into. So if you give like the 10-second of like what home base is and the family that you've built for these different venues and these events, like in your words, how would you describe home base?
Home base is it's built on the community aspect of music, people being able to come and enjoy and have a really great time, and just giving people the opportunity to go and meet other like-minded individuals and be able to just, enjoy a weekend full of music and, live, carefree. And then, as I describe home base, always, it's the central place for people to stay when attending a music festival. So when they're attending EDC Orlando or they're attending Forbidden Kingdom, it's that central place for people to stay where they can go and be only surrounded by other like-minded individuals and be able to take their experience to the next level on staying at, a really cool site and just being able to, have that access of going and seeing music up until 6 o'clock in the morning, and or just like kicking it by the pool deck and just listen to their favorite artists and stuff. So yeah, it evolves as we go year after year. And you guys obviously know about all the Dirty Bird camping stuff and how, now we're super focused on just home base. And I'm just like really grateful for the team that's built behind it, because I couldn't have done it without them as well too. So, it's really, it's really, really an amazing project that I've been on.
Yeah. So we're excited to bring you back on because we want to hear the stories of, man, you said like this was one of the most challenging events that you've put on. And if you guys love this episode, please go back and listen to the growth, listen to the other stories that Brian shared about like true cut your teeth entrepreneurship, grit and grind for a vision. It's like, man, Brian, like one of a kind kind of experience, and your ability to like hold on, endure, and fight for what other people are going to enjoy. It's unrivaled, man. So, yeah, stoked to have you back, buddy.
Yeah, so we'll definitely dive in on a lot of different aspects of things, because I think there's a lot of information that's going on between us moving to a new resort. Obviously you saw some of the details about the Wyndham Orlando resort closing down. Some of the things that I had to go through on just making sure that we were planning for a longevity process on this project alone. So, I could dive right into it if you want me to kind of
do this dirty, baby. Dive right in.
Yeah, right into it.
All right, tight. So about last year, around June, July, we were locking in our contract for this last November event, and we were also doing our contract for a Heroes Quest, which was this last month that, if a lot of people know, it replaced Dirty Bird Campin' on the same dates, and we really focused on bringing the Forbidden Kingdom audience onto the same kind of experience that we give for like EDC Orlando. So we saw a little bit of things kind of changing and evolving. And I think this is what's so important about just like knowing your true your work, knowing exactly the expertise of what you're in. And I started seeing that the hotel was changing up a little bit of their contracting for specifically for our event. Usually when I see a little bit of the contracting and they're putting certain clauses in there that kind of change things up, I could usually tell that there's something going on that's on the back end. New management company came in, started managing over the space. When you change up some of the contracting where we're not getting all the concessions that we normally get, then I get a little bit of hesitancy on specifically on working with that same property. So during that time, that's when I ended up visiting a new resort, which is the DoubleTree by Hilton, and that's where I locked in my contract for the following year. Either way, we were going to be able to have another property tied in the event that we had one venue that was falling out. We already had our backup already in place. But the plan was to try and do two properties. But since the Wyndham closed down, that's when we kind of like, all right, we're going back to one single focus. I'm so glad we already contracted a new resort. So now we're already kind of moving into that space. Yeah, so I mean that's kind of like a little bit of the details of what was going on in the back end on this new space. It's a 4-star property, super beautiful. It's like the rooms are much more nicer. The event space is much bigger, and I think what we learned from A Hero's Quest and this last November is that we already outgrown the Wyndham Orlando Resort, which is already an expansive, large property. And I don't know if you guys didn't make it over to EDC Orlando this past year, did you? It's
not this past year, no.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So we did close to, I think each night we were doing 8,000 and 10,000 tickets, which, from the growth process, if you listen back on some of these podcasts, I was only doing like 3,000, 5,000 people, on certain nights.
Wow.
So we're already kind of like hitting some pretty high numbers on just, attracting the audience for that weekend. We went through a lot of struggles. I will say that this last November, we tried changing a couple things up, which I think is so important to understand, like your core team who really looks out for you and stuff. And we ended up changing up our security team, which I will never do again. I got to say, I've been with them for a very long time. We're trying to cut back on some numbers and everything else, but it's so important just to remember the quality that you get that comes onto these teams. So we hired another security company that was based out of Fort Lauderdale, which ended up being a total nightmare. I had a lot of different issues working with this team. I will say I ended up having to take control of the security team, pretty much letting go the security manager at that point. And I really had to, pretty much protect the entire asset, of what we built and stuff. I will say that some of the difficulties were just like not having the proper credentials of what we were told that was contracted by us, and we had to deal with a lot of different things that ended up putting us at a little bit more risk of something happening on site. But I think that's where our entire team stepped up. We all worked on just making sure that we were looking out for the security guys that were on site, and then also looking out for our asset ourselves as well too. So I think that was the biggest challenge that we had to deal with. And it was, it was a big realization after the event was over. I was like, man, I just missed my whole team that always looked out for us. And I'm really glad we were able to mend that relationship and get them back on board, which ended up making a Hero's Quest a success and being able to provide a safe environment for everybody to be in. So, yeah, that was kind of like one of the biggest challenges we had to deal with, and I got to say, it's like when we build at Home Base, we're learning all the different parts of the event. When you learn all about the security portion of things, the safety portions of things, the production portions of things, how to kind of evolve and how to make the changes that you need to, so it can still be a success. And I think that's where our team has just had so much. They've had a lot more experience being able to see us grow and build up with us, and being able to like learn all the different pieces as well too. And we know how to cover each other's backs when we need to get something executed and done.
Yeah,
Wow.
some flexibility in there.
I think a lot of people forget like how not the production, like the festival doesn't, but because you saw it obviously. But I think so many people forget like how important each portion of the festival is, including security. You know,
Yeah,
when a festival, you know, we've been to so many festivals that every now and then you'll see that security change. Like they'll just go with a different company, and you'll see just like it's a whole kind of little bit different vibe sometimes of just because
exactly.
of them.
Exactly. You know, and it's so important just to realize what parts each of those those pieces play when it comes down to executing like the event itself. And I think it's really important just understanding like everything leading in, making sure everything's dialed in on every single piece, so then there's no confusion at all when we're going to for the execution of it. So
Mhm.
yeah, no, it was such a learning experience, and I think that's just like when we go through each event, there's always something we learn as we go along. So diving into like just a hero's quest, I'm just going to share this story because I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of people knew what we were going through on the growth pains of it. So leading into this year from January into June, we really didn't know how important it was into diving into like really the music culture of each specific event. Obviously EDC has a bunch of variety. For Forbidden Kingdom, it's super bass heavy. I will tell you, I don't know anything about rhythm music. That was like my biggest learning thing. That just like I just had to learn the ins and outs of it within the last 2 months before the show, because we needed to add on some extra spice of like what's really bringing in that audience that's 18 to 24, that's at FK. I think where we learned a lot was how important it was for the variety on the lineup, but also being able to build into what their core, what do the people want, and I think that's that really dives in on the last 2 months before the show, that we made some major changes on making sure that we can execute it properly. So so leading into this last event, I spoke about it a little bit earlier, but I found out, I got a notification from another hotel who texted me, and they're like, "Hey, did you hear the Wyndham's closing?" I'm like, what do you mean?" And I ended up seeing a news article go out, and it says the Wyndham Orlando Resort is closing doors and laying off 167 employees. I was like, holy shit. I was like, dang, this is actually happening. I was like, why wasn't I notified? And that's when I ended up hitting up the hotel, and I started going into, what's going on? How are we going to be able to execute this event? Are the dates still locked in? And they said everything's still moving in process of executing. I was like, okay, all right, cool. The following week, I got a letter from the hotel, and it stated that home base was canceled, and they said that they pulled the plug. We weren't in the best financial standpoint because of the fact that the room sales just weren't all there. We were still kind of sitting a month and a half out. We were still planning on being able to sell up until the event, and we were making sure that we have all our financials covered, so we can make sure that we execute it perfectly. When I got the letter, I was nervous. Let me tell you, I was like, "Oh shit, what are we gonna do about the sponsors? What are we gonna do about the attendees, the fans? Should I keep on putting money into marketing and advertising? Do I tell do I be fully transparent with my entire team about what's going on?" But where I start seeing it is like, well, a lot of the things I need to hit on my back end on making sure that they don't freak out, and that we can we're making sure we're still making progress towards the event. I got to tell you, I've never ran into a situation like this. This was totally brand new for me, and immediately when I got that letter, I ended up I ended up driving out to Orlando, and I sat down with the GM, and I sat down with the director of sales. And I was like, guys, what are we doing? Come on, are you guys really going to make this a move and just like cancel the event and not push forward on making the hotel money before the doors close? Think about all the staff, all the money that we already put into on marketing and stuff. We already have the artists all booked and already all announced. And they were like, listen, there's nothing you can do, man. Unless you're going to pay us up front right now with the check in hand. They asked for a 6-figure number. I was like, the show's not going to happen. And I was like, the one thing that I always know is, well, if I can't get through management, and I can't get through, through a GM on making this decision to make this event happen, then I need to be able to, go above him. So the one last question I left in that office was, I was like, does ownership know that you're passing up on a $400,000 show because of you guys making this decision right now? And they said, listen, they'll be able to make their decisions on what we need to, but we already made our decision here. And that's where I was like, well, we're kind of like, we're better than this to keep on going in circles, because it sounds like we're not going to make a decision here. And that's when I ended up leaving from there. I came back to my place, and I was like, I started reaching out to all my contacts, everybody that I had. The hotel already started circling me in with the tourism board to go find a new resort. How am I going to find another hotel takeover within 45 days of the event with that's going to host after parties, pool parties? It's impossible. It's pretty much nearly impossible. And that's exactly when I ended up. I was like, the only way we're going to be able to do this is we have to do it at this property. So I ended up looking up who was the owner of the hotel, and I started doing my own research on the side, and that's when I found out who was who run the place, who was the owner of the place. So I ended up looking up this guy. I ended up looking him up on Instagram, and I was like, okay, he has only 200 people that follows him on Instagram, or he follows on Instagram. I was like, there must be one person, and that's I had one mutual friend on there out of anybody, and it was my dog walker. My dog walker, my who washes my dog. Whenever I'm out of town and stuff, I was like, nope, fucking way. I was like, and that's it. Immediately when I ended up calling her, she knew exactly who I was talking about, who ended up giving me his personal contact information. And I ended up looking up this guy. This guy's actually, he manages over $6 billion of assets. He's part of the Orlando Eye Project. He's part of the entire, like all the hotels that were coming into the area and stuff. So he's a very well-represented person. And that's when I contacted him, and we ended up going over exactly what we needed to do to make this show happen. And that's when I ended up getting, I ended up going back and forth on text. We talked about some of the difficulties of why we're not at where we need to be. And I sent over all my history report of it from the last 5 years. And I was like, listen, I've always hit my numbers. I've always sold out. I've always made sure the hotels made money. I brought you guys over $5 million in business. I know we can do this. I know we can all come together as professionals and actually like execute this show. And that's about 4 or 5 days later, we ended up getting on a conference call. We ended up getting a conference call with the GM, the sales director, the owner, and then also the rest of the team all involved. And we were able to get the decision reversed on making sure the show happened.
Let me tell you. My God, that is incredible.
I will tell you, though, I think my biggest difficulties was we were pausing and going. I was like, is this show going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And I was like, how am I going to come up with the money to making sure that this event happens and stuff? The only way I got that deal to go through on making sure that the hotel was going to make it happen was I would have to pay them upfront all the money that would be needed for the property, plus the food and beverage guarantee, plus an extra cushion. And I tell you what, those last 4 weeks were probably the most stressful points of my life on being able to find a solution on making sure that I paid the hotel close up to $420,000 upfront before the doors open.
Holy shit!
I feel like a lot of your experience and everything you had built, like, because you were able to show as another business owner, to business. Here's my reputation. Here's my resume on what I've done for you, what I've done. Here's my deposit is your trust in me to make sure this gets done.
My word. And if we put on an addendum onto this agreement and we talk about a payment schedule and we talk about, hey, making sure that we meet these numbers leading in, if I don't meet those numbers, you can cancel this show, but you can't just let me go just like this because you don't give me any kind of like cushion and being able to come up with the money that we needed to for the event to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we came up with a payment plan. I would have to pay X amount of dollars by the following weekend, and then I would have to pay a certain amount the week before the show, and then I would have to make sure that it was paid in full like a day or two before the show even happened. And I went through a lot of process on making sure that the money was up front, and I think that was my biggest difficulty because also I was trying to focus on the marketing. I was trying to also focus on the operations, trying to focus on making sure production was leading in and that it was executing the show. you know, obviously the stress of making sure the financials were all there was something that was just lingering over. And I tell you, there's a lot of points where I was like, man, should I pull out? You know, we're not at our numbers yet. We're not hitting the certain points. Should we take the loss now? And I tell you what, I started calling a lot of different people and trying to get some advice. And I tell you, I was like, all right, I'm doing this. And then when I made that commitment and I made the go happen, and I signed that addendum, I knew I was like, I'm risking everything I got to making sure that this event goes without a hitch.
What did the, just out of curiosity, I mean, because this is something like, I don't know that I've ever had conversations like that where there's so much anxiety and tension coming from you, and you know what's on the line, and the other side of the table essentially holds all the cards, right? So like you're on that conference call. What did your internal chatter look like? Like how are you thinking through that conversation, if that makes sense, right? Because I mean, you're a sales guy through and through, essentially. Like you're always selling somebody on like attending your event or a different event, or you know, like getting this team and that team, or someone to join your team, etc. Like, so you know how to negotiate, but you're coming to that and you're like, it's got to feel like someone's holding your balls, and you're like, hey, please don't fuck me over here. Like, how did
Yeah.
you navigate that, man?
And that's where I was like, man, you know, if I pay them up front all the money, am I going to actually get it all back? Am I going to be taken care of? You know, in the end, they are closing down. What if I had to go into legal, you know, dispute afterwards? And I think that's where, you know, I had to keep myself contained. I needed to just stay focused. I needed to make sure, you know, some of the team members that were around me were aware about what was going on, because a lot of people were like, well, you know, if you cancel the show, you're gonna lose all your relationships with the artists. You know, if you cancel the show, you know, a lot of people are just going to be, you know, people are going to ask questions and the brand may be ruined. And that's where I had to already make that decision, and I had to follow through with it. Was that, hey, I'm going for this. We're going to do this. We're all going to come together as professionals, as a team, and we're going to execute it. We may not meet some payment schedules for certain aspects right off the bat, but we're going to work our ass off to making sure we meet that part. And I think that's like, that was kind of like some of the scariest thoughts that I've had to ever go through, on knowing if, you know, is the hotel going to take care of us? Or, you know, are they going to order all the sponsored product for us to meet, you know, our sponsorship needs? And I think those are all the different variables that were adding up. And I was like, listen, stay calm, don't worry. And we started running into points where, okay, we can't bring on any more liquor partners. We can't bring on certain, you know, aspects that we normally do. You know, do we invest in more side of the production aspect of things, but the hotel is closing down? And I think that's when I started looking over all the concerns, I always understood that, like, if there's one thing that I've learned over the years, it's that, you know, there's always a solution to a problem. And I think there's always ways to work through it, and, you know, you just can't avoid it. So, you know, I think that's what was like a lot of the moving parts that kind of made me a little nervous on this show altogether. So, I will say that, you know, there's definitely different ways that I had to make sure the money was up front on executing this thing. But the other thing we were starting to get was, all right, we got to make sure the artists are getting paid, you know, making sure that they're paid up front before the show happens, you know. And also too, I think one of our more difficult portions of things too was that we needed to strategize on being able to reach out to this rest of this audience, because we had already announced the phase 1 lineup, and the phase 1 lineup didn't pick up the way that we wanted to. You know, it didn't like hit like a home run on, you know, a complete sellout, which we're normally kind of used to for, you know, something specifically like EDC. And what we ended up doing, I ended up, you know, talking internally with my marketing team, Adriana. I gotta thank you for the world on being able to come up with some of the ideas. And we were like, we need to add on rhythm music into this lineup to kind of reach out to this general audience that, you know, wasn't really fully, like, you know, locked in on staying with us at home base. So we reached out to a couple different promoters up in New York, and these guys do all the best rhythm shows. And I was like, guys, listen, I got on a call with them. I told them all my past story. I was like, listen, I need your help. I need to learn about this music. I need to learn what's going to end up selling and moving a lot of tickets and bringing the rest of these people in. And we all came together. We all came up with a plan, and we were able to add on, I think it was like another 20 artists onto the lineup that were all blowing up in the music scene. And they made their personal calls to those artists because they actually kind of like they're homies with all of them. And that's what when we added on Resistance, Worldwide's View, we ended up adding on Cod Dubs and all these other guys that were just in the rhythm community, and it popped off. I wouldn't. I was going on a huge leap on giving it a try, and I was like, listen, this is like one of my last shots. And that's when we added on that whole phase 2 that was not even planned for from the beginning. And we ended up just going for a full execution on adding on another 20 artists and just getting a bunch of homies that like really love the music community and getting them involved. And I started looking on the back end on some of these artists that we were adding on. I did not know them at first. And I started looking at how popular their pages were on the back end for, on Facebook, on Meta. You can actually look up now your business partners. You can look at other people's stats on how their growth is on followers, how much they're posting and everything else. And you looked up some of these rhythm artists that we added on, bro, they're acclimating by like 150%. They're hitting like 1,200 new followers a week. Some of them are like posting about 85, 100 times. I love like some of the biggest headliners on here, which they did a great performance. But what we've learned over time is sometimes some of these bigger artists, they don't post as much as we want them to. Like they don't share the show as much as we want them to, which doesn't get us really the reach, but we're paying them so much more money. And I think it's just so essential right now is to be focusing on the guys that are really growing and that are doing the shout outs online. They're doing podcasts. They're being heavily active with their communities and stuff. And I think that's what's so important right now is like, as these artists are building up themselves, is like start building your community aspect of things and really, really glue onto them, because that's how you're going to get your rate up. That's how you're going to get the numbers you need to. And that's how you're going to get the popular mass to be, reaching out to you to add you onto the show and stuff. So
that's a $400,000 lesson right there.
Right there. And the promoter's smart enough to like add people that are big, but they're also coming up through. So they are doing all that posting. The promoters would be like, we got the perfect people for you.
yeah, exactly. I think that's I think it's really important. Nowadays you can't just throw these major headliners right onto the lineup, other than John Summit and maybe a couple others that are popping off right now, and just like hope it just like sells out. It's just it doesn't work that way. You really need the whole push of like the artists involved, and then also just like having all the marketing tied in together to making sure it's reaching out to the masses of that that target audience to come out. And I think what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of people like there's not a lot of shows that are selling out right off the bat. And we could talk about the Ritz, for example. At the beginning of the week they may announce an artist, and that week of show they may only see 100 tickets sold on a Monday, but on the day of show then they're hitting like 1,600. And it's a risky move these days. It's something that you really gotta reflect on. And I think that's where we saw for why we weren't selling out right off the bat for this last event, because we were seeing that the audience they just buy the tickets and they buy the room packages and they wait so last minute. And I think that's I think that's what's making people a little wary about what they're booking and where they're putting their their risk on making the show happen. So
I think so too. Like when you're saying that too, the people are waiting more to the last minute. I mean, Electric Forest are probably a great example of the weather situation. Yeah. A lot more people are starting to hold off on booking things now because they're like, well, let's see what the weather's going to be this week, and then I can go buy my ticket online whenever. You're not that your situation, because you're mostly inside, but like people have that rhythm down, that pattern down of waiting to the last minute. Now it feels like.
Yeah, and exactly, and like I think that's where when we have to front money and put put more money into like the lineup or marketing or into the production, making sure everything's leading in, it starts getting riskier and riskier as you get closer to the show, because our goal is always to try and be sold out 30 days in advance, so we can already get payments out. We're already kind of feeling really good about everything coming together, and like I think it's just important on just making sure that you're really, really glued onto that focus and making sure it's sold out 30 days in advance. I think we just got caught with a couple different variables that are super unique, where a venue is pulling out of their contract. You know, are we going to keep on going on with this show? Are we going to keep on pumping money into the marketing portions of things? And I think that's, we were pause and go, and then we were starting to lose traction in the audience while we're starting to add in these new artists and stuff. And I think that's where, you know, it came down to the narrow wire on making sure that we were a success. And I think the biggest portion was we needed to make sure the rooms were sold out, because I was in no doubt that, you know, the single day tickets were going to sell out and we were going to hit a home run. You know, I was very confident on that. I think it was just making sure all the room packages were sold out, which, if we do a comparison on Dirtybird Campin' and Home Bass for that June, we were seeing a lot more of the spend of the general audience. You know, it's normally on Campin' last year, you know, we see average spend of like $1,500. And I did the average for this one, we're looking at like $800, $900. So, you know, you're kind of, we had to change up a little bit of the strategy on making sure that we're reaching this audience, but also too, that we're navigating everything correctly. So I think the strategy of changing things up, adding the new artists, then also putting a lot of focus into, you know, making sure we're building that culture and community that the FK people need, so then they can, you know, be educated about what we're providing. Because a lot of them, I will say, has never stayed at home base. They've never done, you know, an event like ours. And we learned a lot about being able to reach out to that general audience. And I think that's where we're going to see the biggest success. Because like I knew if we hit it, even if we didn't make money in June, I knew that November was going to hit a home run, because we're actually like building that audience anyways. So, you know, it'll help,
it's a whole new market, that you're tapped into. Yeah, man, that's interesting.
So I'll go into a little bit of the more juicier stuff as we move along. But it gets a little more heavier.
That wasn't fucking juicy. Like, what did I miss? Like, what?
I'm telling you, it gets more intense. So I came up with the money. I made sure the hotel got paid up front, and then I was starting to run into the difficulties of making sure production was getting paid up front, and you know that all the necessities were getting done and out of the way before the show, because I had to front all the money. You know, it kind of put us in a tight position, but we were also starting to hit the numbers that we needed to on making sure the hotel was sold out. So we were doing whatever we needed to making sure the rooms were gone, so that we could make sure that we can, you know, hit our numbers for the single day tickets. On that Tuesday of that week, we were supposed to have production loading in, and then setting up, you know, stages, going over the stage designs, you know, start pushing everything in. I got an email from the production team, and they stated that they're no longer doing the show. Tuesday of that week, when I was like, wait, we're going.
Dude, have you gone to a doctor? Do you have stomach ulcers? Dude, holy shit.
And I started reaching out to everybody to come in full circle. They wanted to get paid up front. And plus, we were working through some technical other portions of things from our last event. And they wanted to get paid up front. And I was like, guys, you got to just wait and just deal with me. And this team I've worked with for a very long time. But I tell you what, I do not have any animosity against them. I don't have anything, no anger to them. All I knew was at that point in time, I was like, I got to find a solution. And that's when I started doing all the reach outs. And I think that's why it's so important to keep your closest contacts still as your friends, and being able to, you know where you need to find the solution of what you needed. When production pulled out, that was like one of the heaviest parts of a day. You know, I was already kind of still making sure that we were hitting our numbers for the single day tickets coming in. And I ended up making a couple phone calls, and we came together on getting brand new stage designs. We ended up getting a team of about 40 people. We got a new production manager, and we all came together on making sure that we had everything loaded in the next day, as long as it was paid up front, which I think that's where we always run into, like, you know, just communicating and talking to each other about what you need, because it's just like the situation with the hotel pulling out at the venue. You know, they're pulling out on us and just telling us that, yo, we want all the money up front. And I think that's like the same thing with production too. If you guys just gave me a heads up and be like, yo, I need this exact amount by this time on this day, then I'll make sure that I meet those ends. But if you're telling me you're going to load in, you're like, you know, you're planning on being on site, and, you know, you're working on giving the rooming list for all your staff, you know, I'm feeling comfortable saying that, all right, I'm going to start focusing on other aspects while I make sure that the money's there to get it to them. the next day I ended up paying that brand new production team, everybody that came on board, I paid them up front, and they were already rocking and rolling. They were loading in that next day. I will say that it was one of the more difficult things I had to deal with, because I was like, well, we're dealing with the hotel now we're dealing with production, and then we started getting to the artist payments. Let me tell you, I think what's so important is just being transparent on what's going on. And if I told the artist probably like 30 days ago that the hotel like canceled canceled our agreement, and told them some of those things, I think a lot of them would have pulled out. I think a lot of them would have just like not even gone on with the show. They would have already felt the risk of things going on. Then I would have been feeling the stress of what was going on. But some of my core team members knew what was circulating and how we were formulating, but they entrusted me in making sure that that there was a solution and the show was going to still go on. We started getting emails from the agents on getting payments up front, and I was just started running into a situation of just like making sure I'm paying each headliner and getting them out of the way piece by piece as we're going into the show. And like we were starting to get some threats of the band not coming on their plane and coming down to play at home base that they agreed to, because they wanted to get paid completely up front beforehand. And that's when I ended up talking to my artist relations team, and I was like, listen, send me the agent's numbers. I never got to talk to the agents. Usually I have my talent buyer handle it. I usually have my team that handles it. And I reached out to them, and I told them straight up, I was like, guys, this is what the situation I'm going through. I know we can all come together as professionals and make this work out. I guarantee you guys are always going to get paid. I guarantee you, from all my past history, everybody has been paid out, and we've always executed every event amazingly. And these are the things that we had to go through. And I was like, we're just in a very unique situation where the hotel needed all the money up front. And I don't think I wouldn't be lying to you guys about this, but like when I have to front not only the food and beverage guarantee, but also the room guarantee and all that stuff, then it kind of like puts us in a situation on being able to have, the funds that we need to making sure that this show happened. It came down to the narrow wire each time on reaching out to these agents. And I think the best thing I ever got was a direct text message, and they said, thank you for being transparent with what's going on, and we'll keep an eye out for the money to come through. We're going to be sending the boys on the plane to come play your show. And that happened 4 different times over the weekend as we progressed through everything, and we made it happen. I got to just say huge thanks, just everybody understanding and just knowing what the bigger picture was of what we're doing. And I tell you, those were some pretty big steps that we had to go through for this show to actually happen. And this is why I wanted to talk about it, because nobody really knew what was going on the back end for a lot of different things. And really, it's just like there's always a solution to the problem, to a problem, and we can always make it through if we all work on this together. If we all come together on making sure that we meet the ends of what's needed and stuff. So I think those were kind of like the couple different aspects of what happened leading in. Now there was one last thing that had to put the cherry on top of this whole thing that had to happen at the event. On Saturday night, we had the head fire marshal. He's like, he oversees the whole county came in, and he was the only one working on site for 3 major ballroom spaces, and I had already paid for 2 fire watches, but they only set in the main head one. He came in pretty aggressively, and he ended up telling at a certain point when we were loading in everybody to come in for Big Gigantic, he told security to hold the doors and not let anybody in until we fixed a couple different scenarios inside. Some of the scenarios that happened inside, we had a bunch of, a lot of kids that were kind of burnt out from being an FK all day. And they just wanted to sit down. The problem was they kept on wanting to sit down in front of the doors, the exit ways, entryways, in the middle of the floor to the dance floor. And every time we go and tap on somebody to stand up, 4 other kids would go sit down and just like sit in the same space again. And I think that's, we were running into a couple of those major issues, but, we were trying to work through the solution on things, to make sure the flow was going on, that we ended up, being able to execute the show very well. he paused doors for a good bit, and we ended up working through the solutions of what we needed to. One stage we had to cut out, and we ended up moving a lot of those acts to the following day. We ended up doing a couple different things for in the certain major portions of things, but it ended up we ended up having after an hour and a half, we were able to start letting people in again. But by that time, a lot of people had already kind of like made the decision on leaving and stuff. So we're still working through a lot of those I would say concerns from the past event. And I promise you, I've done this event at the same hotel many times. I've done over 10,000 people on a Saturday night. For him to come in on say like a night like it was on that night, I mean, we were running close to 3,000 tickets. I mean, we were still kind of running it short, and it's just kind of like we kind of felt in the position of kind of being targeted because of some of the things that we've done with like the property and stuff, and we were still able to work through it. We were still able to let another 600 people in. The bands, the artists, they all had a great show. I mean, the full production was like amazing, but we did have to run into that issue as well too. Yeah, that was definitely
big, gigantic too. I know the crowd. That's a big crowd they're pulling too.
Yeah,
especially all day at FK. Woo, yeah,
we're hitting up for like a fully sold out show, and then we had to pause ticket sales. We had to change everything up, and then we had to start working on a strategy on just getting everybody in so that they could still come in and enjoy the show. And we're just working through all the different portions of that stuff. It's interesting how people go online and they start spreading rumors or start saying this or that. They're like, oh, the fire marshal shut down the entire event, nobody got to play. No, dude, the music still went on. We still went on until 5-6 a.m. Each night we didn't have any other shutdowns other than on Friday night. One of the stage guys in another room, he ended up turning on his fog machine that I told him not to use that triggered the fire alarm, and we had to evacuate the building on Friday night during Levity's set. And we were like, damn, like, we got to clear out this entire room on Friday. And people were like, oh, no, it was the fire marshal shutting down the event and all this stuff. I was like, no, it's because this kid used this fog machine that I told him not to use. And then all of a sudden, like, we're getting a little bit of backlash. As soon as we cleared out the building, everybody was out of there within 15 minutes. Within 15 minutes, we had everybody come right back in, and we ended up rocking out the show. But I tell you, like, this is the stop, go, piece by piece thing. Ooh, it was like a continuous thing for the last month through May into June. So yeah, I think those are some of the craziest things that I had to deal with. But in the end, we were able to still pull it off. We were able to still pull it off. I think I think those are all the different pieces on this event that made it a little bit difficult. On that Sunday, the one thing that we had to do was we're like, yo, what are we going to do about the people that didn't get to make it in for Big G or be able to, be able to come, like, enjoy the night, the experience that they deserve. I made that decision at 6 a.m. I was like, listen, we're going to send complimentary tickets to every single person that was there on Saturday night. Either way, if they have Friday, Saturday night tickets, give them complimentary tickets. Let them come enjoy the show on Sunday. And that's when I texted the Rhythm guys from up in New York. They had helped me build that whole lineup on Sunday of the Resistance Worldwide debut. Also, we had the pool stage that was running all day. And I was like, guys, I need your help. I think I know how to like make sure we make it up to these people, but I need you to help me on building out this lineup. Instead of us opening doors on the main stage at 10 or 11 p.m., let's get everybody involved and add to the lineup another full stacked lineup of artists. And let's get them to play on Sunday and open the doors at 1 p.m. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up adding a bunch of artists. You saw, like, on that day of show on Sunday, you see a whole new lineup of like artist editions. And then we ended up making a complimentary for so many people. And then we opened up the main stage doors for everybody to start rocking out right off the bat. Wow. And we had both simultaneously the pool stage rocking out while we had the main ballroom space. And some people thought I was nuts. They were like, so you're telling me you want to open up Pandora's box to the main stage at 2 p.m. and start cranking up music? I was like, fuck yeah, I do.
Dude, that's the point where Brian's like, pull the levers, Grog! Just like everything.
And I tell you what, it was like one of the most, I think that's why I love being as an independent promoter, we can pull triggers like that and make decisions pretty quickly as long as we have everybody on the same page. And I think when my team started hearing that, they were like, so Brian's going to start opening up the main stage and start getting music going at 2 p.m. Is he fucking crazy? I was like, no, we got to make it up to these people. We got to make sure we could throw a sick show. Why not? We got the production here. We're hitting a home run on, on people coming and enjoying the show. So let's get it going. And that's we all came together as professionals, and we made sure that the stage was turned on and we were cranking up music. And I tell you what, a lot of people enjoyed that because of the fact that they could go into that main ballroom space and sit down and be able to enjoy the show and start it off a lot earlier, and being able to just go inside AC, and just being able to just enjoy straight up rhythm music. I tell you what, I looked at Aaron, Mo Money. He's another Detroit promoter that jumped on board, and I looked at Eric, and I was like, so we're doing this? And they're like, yeah. He was like, Aaron looked at me, he's like, are you fucking crazy? We're doing 16 hours of rhythm tonight. Start up music from 2 p.m. up until 6 a.m., cranking it out, and we ended up throwing one of the sickest shows. And I tell you, that worldwide debut that we did was probably the most sensational things that people we made a huge impact in the rhythm community, and we had all eyes on us on what we pulled off. And I gotta say huge thank yous to those 3 guys that ended up jumping on board. And I'm so excited to be able to work with them in November, because they saw what the position we were in, and they aligned with what I wanted to execute, and we ended up making it happen.
And you're like, something I noticed consistent is like, every time you made your case, every time you did it, all of them are like, thank you for being upfront about everything. Thank you for being honest with what's going on and that you're going to make it happen. And the fact that you're doing that is the reason why they did it. It just makes it show how many like sleazy people are out there, promoters are out there to try to make something happen, but they hide what's going on. Like because you were honest and you share what happened, not only did they provide the talent, but they even helped you further to be like, let's make this big. Let's do this. Like you're making something happen out of nothing almost, and almost a whole new festival by the end
yeah within like 2-3 weeks of the show. And I think that's where we kind of learned on a lot of these pieces of like being able to make moves and stay consistent with them and just keep on progressing through what you need to do so we can make the event happen. I think that was so important on just remembering that it's not just about like I'll take a step back, but like I would call some certain different promoters, and they'd FaceTime me, and they're like, are you gonna pull out? And I was like, I don't know. And they're like, I mean, you may need to just take the loss and just like, cancel the show. And it was like,
not Brian.
Not
Brian
me.
finds the solutions.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think there were multiple times where I would call somebody, I'm like, so I need, I won't forget, somebody came over to my place, and I was like, they were complaining to me about like, they were telling me, Brian, I got to find like $2,000 for me to make rent, coming up. And they were talking about their life problems. I was like, oh, cool. I got to come up with $225,000 by tomorrow. And so you think you have problems, we're all in the same, we're all in the same storm. Some of our boats are bigger and smaller, but there's always a solution on being able to make it through that portion of things. So yeah.
And shout out to your team too. That I know we're hearing from you, and you were making a lot of these big decisions, and of course, kind of at the helm of it. But of course, we know without your team being there to support you and trust you as well with what you're telling them, man, that good. That's awesome on them too, to be like, we're gonna take the heat too. Let's do this.
I tell you, like I said, if I'm going to write a chapter in my book, this is I'm 33 years old. It's going to be chapter 33, A Real Hero's Quest. Because I tell you what, everybody stepped to the plate as a different hero, and making sure that they executed what they needed to, that they got their budget down, that we were able to still provide a great event and experience to all the attendees, the staff, the security team, everybody that was involved. And I think that's like where we all saw us leaning on each other to making sure we execute the event perfectly, so yeah, it's quite a crazy experience. And I tell you what, if I ever run into this situation again, I definitely know exactly how to handle it. But I tell you, I'm really excited about like moving to a new resort and just I'm glad this is all behind us. But man, I would have never expected like 10 different issues that come to the table to even affect it, because I think a lot of people, when production pulled out, they would have just canceled the show. Like
Right.
I don't think there was a lot of people that would be able to like still pull it off. And I think we're all on different email threads and being like, damn, we actually did it. So it's really cool to see, just being able to know all the right proper channels and the people to being able to execute properly.
Yeah, things like that galvanize you as a leader, galvanize your team. Like on the other side of that, I can't even imagine how stoked your team is. They're like, you guys probably at this point, you're like, we can literally take over the world. Like we can do anything, man. That's the cool part about you being a Buffalo and going through that storm. On the other side of it now, you're like what else could get thrown my way that we can't handle?
Yeah, exactly. And like I some of those I had a call today and we were going over a lot of the talent stuff and talking about the challenges that we had to go through and stuff. And he understood what we're going through, and it's just just being able to know that we're gonna this isn't going to happen again. We're not going to be in this kind of type of situation. And I think that's where we have full belief in being able to understand that we can really do anything. I really think so, and I think that's what people really like to see. I'm just like us as like underground music lovers really bringing to the table on executing an amazing event like this, and just creating different strategies, and just like it's kind of exciting, but it's kind of like really kind of clenching as well too.
Well, I know we're running over time here, brother, so we want to respect your time, man. But like, dude, your ability to deliver fucking wild ass stories every time you come on here is
Incredible.
just like unbelievable, man. So like, from the bottom of my heart, I hope you
entrepreneurship. Whew.
never experience something like this again. But selfishly, don't stop with the good stories. We love you for it.
Yeah. That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
man.
yeah, before you hop off too, what the next festival coming out? Where can they go to get the tickets and start booking?
Yeah, so we got home base for EDC Orlando. It's in November. It's November 9th through the 12th or 13th, something like that. And it's it's a hotel takeover setup. We're at a brand new property, 4-star property. We don't have to worry about all the concerns from before. It's way bigger spaces. The two main stages are going to be way bigger as well too. And I'm excited to see where we kind of evolve with this new property. I will say though, I think we're going to get to a point within the next 2 years of doing the same space that we're going to need to move another step up. And I'm really stoked to already have that on the radar, just knowing that we're going to go to something much more larger down the line. So I'm really excited about all of it.
Well, if anyone ever doubts whether or not that event's going to move forward, you can just send them this episode. You can put this in the marketing material and be like, listen, motherfuckers, it's going down. Mark it. If you need the confidence, just check out what we've been through.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I tell you, it's I always make sure the show goes through. I think that's what's really important, because I always look at the longevity of things. And so yeah, and this is one episode I really wanted to share this story, because a lot of people didn't know what the fuck was going on. So
Yeah, man. Well, we love you so much for it. Hey, if you guys enjoy this episode, forget about giving us a review. Head over to Home Base, check them out. Obviously, we got the show coming up. Grab your ticket there. Dylan and I can personally vouch. It's an amazing production. So we'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all.